You're calm. You're reasonable. And somehow people still keep pushing you. Here's the mistake: you explain too much. Instead, say this once: I'm not available for that. No apology. No reasons. Then stop talking. That pause is what makes the boundary stick. This sentence helps, but it's only half of emotional control. The other half is explained in today's Stoic Focus Lab episode. You're staring at a Slack message on a Sunday night, heart tight and jaw clenched, wondering if staying calm means letting this slide again. You haven't answered, because every reply feels like either a fight or a fold. You're caught in that familiar tension between self-respect and keeping the peace. Here's the truth most people miss: calm isn't weakness, and it isn't silence. Calm is control, and control is what stops others from deciding how you show up. Try this today: I'm not deciding that right now, I'll get back to you. When you say it, your body loosens instead of bracing for impact. The pressure to perform or please drops, and you buy yourself space to think before reacting. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. This confusion is costing you more than a moment of discomfort. At work, you either swallow resentment and burn out, or snap and damage trust. In relationships, you over-explain, apologize for reasonable needs, and then feel invisible later. Every time you choose peacekeeping over self-respect, you teach people how to treat you. That pattern leaks into money decisions, too, where you agree to terms that don't work for you because conflict feels expensive. It shows up on the commute home, in the tightness of your shoulders, and in the way you rehearse comebacks you'll never use. By the end of this, you'll know how to pause without backing down, speak clearly without escalating, and leave conversations with your dignity intact. You'll feel steady in your chest while holding a boundary, instead of replaying the moment all night. Today, you'll build a calm that signals strength, so your no lands clean and your yes actually means something. If you want practical tools that work in real conversations, this channel is for you. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. First, you'll learn how to slow a moment without losing authority. Next, you'll see how small language shifts change the power dynamic immediately, then how to hold your line under pressure. Finally, you'll put it together so calm becomes your default, not an act. Later, I'll walk you through a real workplace moment where this approach keeps you respected without raising your voice. You'll recognize the moment it starts to tilt, and you'll know exactly what to say next. If you've ever been told to just stay calm, you know how invalidating that sounds when the line keeps moving. Calm without skill turns into self-betrayal, and that quiet resentment builds interest. Eventually, it comes out sideways, through sarcasm, withdrawal, or a blow-up that surprises everyone, including you. What you're learning here is how to keep your center while making your limits obvious. Not louder, not longer, not meaner, just clearer. This isn't about winning arguments, it's about ending them faster and sleeping better after. In the next few minutes, you'll feel your breathing slow, your words shorten, and your confidence rise without anyone feeling attacked. That's how calm stops being a mask and becomes a tool you can reach for on demand. Consider how many decisions you delayed because you don't trust yourself to stay steady once the conversation starts. That hesitation shrinks your options and hands time to someone else. Learning this now puts choice back where it belongs, with you, even when the stakes feel high. By the end, you'll recognize that the calmest person in the room often sets the terms, quietly and consistently. That shift is what we're building together, starting right now, one clear moment at a time, without forcing yourself to be someone you're not. You can feel that strength. Let me think about that and circle back. Say it exactly like that. Not softer, not faster, not with an apology attached. When you use this line, the room doesn't collapse. The other person doesn't explode. What actually happens is simpler. The moment slows down, and you stay upright instead of shrinking or lunging. This works because most pressure is time-based, not logic-based. People push for an answer now because urgency favors whoever applies it. When you remove immediacy, you remove their leverage. You're not refusing. You're not complying. You're reclaiming the right to decide with a clear head. The nervous system reads this as safety, and once your body feels safe, your thinking comes back online. That's why your shoulders drop a fraction and your voice steadies when you say it. Picture a North American work moment you know well. A manager pings you late afternoon with, "Can you take this on by Monday?" You feel that familiar spike. If you say yes, your weekend's gone. If you say no, you worry you'll look uncooperative. Old, you might over-explain, negotiate against yourself, or agree and resent it. This time, you read the message, breathe once, and reply with the line. No justification. 10 minutes later, the pressure that felt overwhelming has cooled. You're back in the driver's seat, reviewing your actual capacity instead of reacting to theirs. The tiny action today is measurable. Use this line once in the next 24 hours in any low-stakes situation, an email, a text, a scheduling task. Count it as a win if you say it cleanly and stop typing. You're training your nervous system to tolerate the pause without filling it. That's the skill. Now slow this down for 30 seconds. Sit back where you are. Unclench your jaw. Inhale through your nose for 4, exhale through your mouth for 6. As you breathe out, imagine the space you just created widening slightly. That space is where your self-respect lives. You don't need to defend it, you need to occupy it. Notice what didn't happen. You didn't escalate. You didn't cave. You didn't apologize for existing. That's the middle path most people never practice. And when you practice it, something subtle changes in how others approach you. They start to bring you cleaner requests, clearer timelines, fewer emotional dumps. Not because you demanded it, but because your calm signaled boundaries. This is where people get tripped up. They think being calm means being agreeable. It doesn't. Calm is the posture that makes your words land. Think of it like lowering the noise floor so the signal is clear. When your tone is steady and your sentence is short, there's nothing to push against. Pressure loses its hook. You might notice a flicker of guilt after you send the message. That's normal. Guilt is the echo of an old pattern breaking. Let it pass without acting on it. If you rush back in with an explanation, you undo the work. If you hold, you teach your body that nothing bad happens when you don't immediately fix other people's discomfort. Remember the moment teased earlier, the one where things start to tilt. This is the first lever you will use there. Before you assert anything, you slow time. You make the conversation safer for yourself. Only then do you decide what you actually want to say. Try this once more today, even if your voice shakes slightly. The shaking is energy settling, not weakness. With repetition, the steadiness comes first, and the words follow. Calm becomes something you choose, not something you perform. As you move through the rest of your day, notice how often urgency is manufactured. Every time you resist it cleanly, you're practicing emotional control without becoming a doormat. You're not hardening. You're clarifying. And clarity is what people respect, even if they don't say it out loud. You're standing in the kitchen, phone in hand, reading a text that makes your stomach drop. It's someone close to you saying, "I just don't feel like you're really there for me lately." There's no greeting, no context, just a quiet accusation hanging in the air. Your instinct kicks in fast. You start drafting a long reply in your head, listing everything you've done, every late night, every favor. You want to be understood, and you want the tension gone. That's the mistake. The moment you try to prove your worth under emotional pressure, you hand the steering wheel to the other person. Over-explaining feels like strength, but it's actually a bid for approval. It signals that you're unsure your boundary will stand on its own. When you flood the moment with reasons, you invite debate, correction, and escalation. Suddenly, what could have been a calm exchange turns into a trial where you're defending your character instead of addressing the issue. The correction is simple and uncomfortable at first. You respond to emotion with acknowledgement, not justification. Try this instead. "I hear that you're feeling disconnected. Let's talk about what you need." That's it. No counter-arguments. No resume of your efforts. You name what's present and redirect toward a solution. This works because people in emotional states are rarely looking for data. They're looking to be seen. When you acknowledge the feeling without surrendering your position, you lower defensiveness on both sides. Your nervous system stays regulated because you're not fighting to be right, and theirs settles because they've been heard. The conversation shifts from accusation to collaboration. The tiny action today is to catch yourself mid-explanation once. You'll feel it in your chest, that urge to keep typing or talking. When you notice it, stop after the first clear sentence. Let the silence do its work. Measure success by how much you don't say, not how persuasive you are. Now interrupt the pattern physically. Drop your shoulders. Place your feet flat on the floor. Take one slow breath in and a longer one out. Ask yourself, quietly, what's actually being asked of me right now? Not what's implied, not what you fear, just what's being asked. That question cuts through emotional fog. This shows up everywhere in North American life. In meetings, when feedback feels personal. In family calls, when expectations are hinted instead of stated. In dating, when someone tests availability without naming it. Each time, the old habit is to rush in and smooth things over. The new habit is to stay present and invite clarity. There's a deeper layer here. Over-explaining is often a leftover survival strategy. At some point, being thorough kept you safe. It prevented misunderstanding or punishment. But in adult relationships, it often does the opposite. It blurs your message and weakens your position. Calm doesn't need a speech. It needs alignment between your words and your self-respect. Notice how this connects to the earlier tool. First you slow the moment. Then you resist the urge to fill it. That's the sequence. When you combine them, conversations change texture. They get shorter, cleaner, and less draining. You might worry that being this direct will seem cold. In practice, it reads as grounded. People feel the difference immediately. They sense that you're not panicking, not pleading, not posturing. You're engaged, but you're not chasing. That balance is rare, and it resets dynamics quickly. Test this in a real conversation soon. Let the old reaction almost take over, then choose the correction. Feel the discomfort rise and fall without acting on it. That's emotional control in motion, not in theory. And as you practice, you'll find that calm stops being something you try to maintain and starts being the state you return to when things get tense. There's a popular belief that sounds practical until you test it in real life. If you stay calm, people will take advantage of you. That belief usually comes from watching loud people win in the short term, or from growing up around moods that controlled the room. So you learn a false equation: calm equals surrender, and intensity equals strength. But what actually invites disrespect isn't calm. It's vague. When your limits are unclear, people keep pushing to find them. When your limits are clear, pressure has nowhere to land. Here's the instruction that changes how calm shows up under pressure. Say your boundary once, in one sentence, and then stop talking. Not twice. Not wrapped in stories. Not followed by nervous bargaining. One sentence, then silence. Use this exact script: I'm not available for that. If you need to add a practical option, add only one, and make it specific: I'm not available for that. I can do Tuesday at 2. Then you stop. The stakes are bigger than the moment. If you soften the line, you train people that your no is temporary and your yes can be squeezed out with enough pressure. That costs you sleep, weekends, focus, and self-respect. If you sharpen the line with anger, you create blowback. The conversation becomes about your tone, people go defensive, and you carry that adrenaline into the rest of your day. Calm boundaries avoid both traps. You don't fold, and you don't fight. You hold your ground without making the other person your enemy. Picture a high-pressure North American scenario. You're on a Zoom call at 4:45 p.m. on a Friday. A client says, "We need a revised deck by Monday morning," and everyone pauses, waiting to see if you'll cave. You feel heat rise in your chest. Old, you might do one of two things: over-explain why it's hard, hoping they'll feel guilty, or agree and hate yourself later. This time, you keep your voice level and say, I'm not available for that timeline. I can deliver it Wednesday morning. Then you stop talking. No extra paragraphs. No anxious smile. No, does that work for you? You let the sentence land. This works because calm certainty removes the emotional handle someone can grab. When there's no apology and no escalation, the other person can't easily pull you into a debate without looking unreasonable. Your boundary becomes a fact, not a challenge. And the silence after the sentence is not emptiness, it's the moment you stop negotiating against yourself. Most people lose ground in the extra sentences: I'm not available, but I could try, if it's not too much, unless you really need it. That isn't kindness. That's fear wearing a polite mask. Now practice it slowly, because under stress your body will try to outrun your mind. Sit upright. Drop your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Inhale through your nose for 4, exhale for 6. On the exhale, feel your chest soften. Then say the script out loud once, at a normal volume, slightly slower than you want: I'm not available for that. After you say it, keep your lips closed for a full 2 seconds. Notice the urge to rescue the moment with explanations. Let the urge rise, and let it pass. That urge is your nervous system learning that you can tolerate discomfort without selling yourself out. If you're worried this will sound cold, remember this: warmth is optional, clarity is required. You can be respectful without being porous. A calm boundary can include one line of goodwill, as long as it doesn't reopen negotiations: I hear you, and I'm not available for that. Or, I understand the urgency. I'm not available for that. You acknowledge their reality without sacrificing yours. Expect one more push. Calm boundaries often trigger a follow-up attempt: it'll only take an hour, or everyone's counting on you, or just this once. That's the moment people-pleasing usually takes the wheel. Your job is to repeat the boundary without variation, same words, and same tone. Repetition is what teaches, not intensity. If you change your wording each time, it sounds like bargaining. If you repeat it, it sounds like a decision. This locks in what you've already built. You slow the moment so urgency can't hijack you. You stop over-explaining so you don't invite a courtroom debate. Then you deliver one calm sentence and let silence do the heavy lifting. In the next section, you'll watch these tools play out inside a longer, messier situation, one where your old reaction almost wins, and you feel the exact moment you'd normally give up. This time, you won't. It's 6:18 p.m., you're finally packing up after a long day, and your phone buzzes with a message you were hoping not to see. It's from someone you work closely with, the kind of relationship where lines have always been a little blurry. The message reads, "Hey, quick thing, can you jump on this tonight?" It shouldn't take long. Your body reacts before your mind does. A tightness in your chest. A quick mental scan of everything you still need to do. Dinner plans. Fatigue. That familiar pull to say yes just to keep things smooth. You almost type, "Sure, I'll try." That's the old reaction warming up. You catch it. You remember the pause. You don't answer right away. You set the phone down on the counter and take one slow breath in through your nose, then a longer one out. Your shoulders drop a fraction. The urgency loses its edge. When you pick the phone back up, you're calmer, not because the situation changed, but because you did. You type, "Let me think about that and circle back." You send it, then stop. No follow-up. No emoji. For a moment, there's discomfort. You notice the urge to explain yourself, to add context so they don't misinterpret your silence. You don't. You put the phone face down and finish what you were doing. 10 minutes later, the world hasn't ended. The other person replies, "Okay." That single word feels like relief, but you don't rush to fill the space. You're using it to decide what you actually want. Later that evening, you look at your schedule honestly. You could technically squeeze it in, but you know the cost. You'd be wired late, irritated tomorrow, and quietly resentful. That resentment would leak into future interactions. You've seen that movie before. So you choose clarity over habit. You pick up the phone again. Before you respond, you sit down and ground yourself. Feet flat on the floor. Back against the chair. One slow breath. You feel the weight of your body supported. Then you type, "I'm not available tonight. I can take a look tomorrow afternoon." You send it and stop typing. Your jaw wants to tighten, you relax it. There's a pause. This is usually where anxiety spikes. You notice the familiar thought, what if they're annoyed? What if this changes how they see me? You don't chase the thought. You stay with your breathing, slow and steady. The pause stretches, then breaks. Got it. Tomorrow works. Something subtle shifts in you. Not triumph, not relief exactly, steadiness. You didn't argue. You didn't apologize. You didn't disappear. You stayed present and held your line. Later that night, as you're getting ready for bed, the moment tries to replay in your head, out of habit. This time, it fades quickly. There's no spiral. Your body isn't buzzing. You feel tired in a clean way, not a depleted one. That's the difference between giving from choice and giving from pressure. The next day, the interaction is smoother. The task is clearer. There's less emotional static. You notice you're being treated more like a collaborator and less like an emergency button. Nothing dramatic was said, but something was taught. Calmly. This is how emotional control looks in real life. Not grand speeches. Not perfect composure. Just a series of small decisions where you slow the moment, resist the urge to over-explain, and state a clear boundary once. The old reaction still shows up, but it doesn't run the show. You feel it, you acknowledge it, and you choose differently. As the day goes on, you realize you're carrying less tension in your body. Your breathing is easier. You're more present in conversations because you're not bracing for hidden demands. You slept better that night, not because everything went your way, but because you didn't abandon yourself to keep the peace. That's the payoff. Calm that doesn't cost you. Boundaries that don't require drama. A quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can handle pressure without folding or flaring. This isn't about being rigid. It's about being grounded enough to choose, even when it would be easier to slip back into old patterns. What you've been practicing through this entire lesson is the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is fast, automatic, and usually followed by regret. Responding is slower, intentional, and aligned with who you want to be after the conversation ends. Calm isn't the absence of emotion, it's the ability to feel emotion without letting it dictate your behavior. When you stay calm, you're not disconnecting from the moment. You're staying present enough to choose your response instead of being dragged by it. First, you learned how to slow the moment so urgency couldn't hijack you. You saw that most pressure isn't logical, it's temporal. When you refused to decide immediately, your body had time to settle and your mind had room to think. Then, you removed the habit of over-explaining, which quietly hands power away. You practiced acknowledging emotion without defending your worth, so conversations stopped turning into debates about who's right and who's wrong. Next, you learned how to state a boundary once, clearly, and let silence carry the weight instead of your nervous energy. Finally, you watched those tools work together in a real situation where fatigue, habit, and people-pleasing almost won. They didn't. Not because you were tougher, but because you were steadier. Notice what ties all of this together. You didn't add more effort. You removed the leakage. Fewer words. Fewer justifications. Fewer emotional spikes. What remained was clarity. And clarity is what people respond to, even if they don't consciously like it at the moment. Calm doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. It turns emotional control into something observable, not theoretical. Here's exactly what to do today, in concrete terms. First, deliberately use one pause. The next time a request, message, or question creates pressure in your body, do not respond immediately. Wait at least 5 minutes, even if you already know your answer. Then send one clean sentence that buys time or states your position. Second, catch yourself mid-explanation one time. The moment you feel yourself stacking reasons or softening your message, stop after the first clear sentence. Let the silence or the space in the chat sit there. Third, state one boundary once and repeat it verbatim if challenged. Same words. Same tone. No added logic. No emotional shading. The day counts as a success if you do each of these once, regardless of how the other person reacts. As you do this, pay attention to your body more than the outcome. Notice the moment when discomfort peaks and then fades without you fixing it. That's your nervous system learning something new. Most people never let that moment pass. They rush to relieve it by explaining, apologizing, or conceding. You're training yourself to stay. That ability transfers everywhere: work, money, conversations, family dynamics, dating, even how you talk to yourself. A useful next step after this lesson is learning how to handle emotional pushback without getting pulled into it. Pressure doesn't always show up as aggression. Often it comes disguised as disappointment, guilt, or urgency that feels personal. A logical follow-up would be a lesson on navigating guilt trips and subtle manipulation, something like how to say no without feeling like the bad guy. That matters because once you start holding boundaries, the pressure often gets quieter, not louder. Staying grounded there keeps you from slipping back into old patterns. As you move through the rest of your day, notice the aftereffects of clean interactions. Notice how quickly your mind lets go of conversations when you don't betray yourself in them. Notice how your evenings feel when you don't agree to something you resented. Notice how respect shows up not as praise, but as fewer emergency requests, clearer expectations, and shorter negotiations. These are small signals, but they compound. There will still be moments when you revert. You'll hear yourself over-explain, or you'll agree too quickly, or you'll feel that familiar pang of resentment afterward. That doesn't mean this didn't work. It means you noticed. Every notice is a repetition. Emotional control isn't built by perfection, it's built by awareness followed by a different choice the next time. You don't need to be louder to be taken seriously. You don't need to harden yourself or withdraw to stay safe. You don't need to perform calm while feeling shaky inside. What you need is fewer words, steadier breath, and the willingness to let a moment be uncomfortable without rescuing it. That's the kind of calm that earns respect quietly, including from yourself. When you trust that you can handle pressure without folding or flaring, you stop dreading conversations. You enter them grounded. You leave them intact. And over time, people learn how to approach you differently, not because you demanded it, but because clarity teaches faster than emotion ever could. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.